Hi, it's KCCK's Culture Crawl. I'm Dennis Green, and my guests today are Latin jazz legends in Iowa, Jim Dreier and Ed East. Sorry, gentlemen, you get to be a certain age, you're just legends. That's the way of it.
We'll accept.
I'll take it. I'll
Welcome.
take it.
Welcome. It's great to have you on.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you, Dennis.
It's a big spring and summer. We've got a lot of things coming up, a lot of them associated with KCCK, and then a big one this summer as well. So let's just dive in first. Well, let's talk Taste of Jazz, because that's coming right up this week as Orquesta Alto Maiz is headlining at Taste of Jazz, KCCK's annual jazz education fundraiser. We have told the story of the orquesta so many times, and it was told really, really well, Jim, last year about this time.
Yep.
When you had your big retirement concert at the University of Iowa. I felt like that was kind of the definitive retelling of the legend with
Yeah, it was definitely with a PowerPoint.
Yeah, there was a PowerPoint.
Everything. Yes.
There was even a PowerPoint.
Yes, and a script.
But Ed, you also have been with the band since the very beginning, one of the founding members, along with with Jim and Bob Washut and others. And you are the one who has really been charged with continuing to keep this flame burning. So tell me a little bit about Orquesta Alto Maiz today.
Well, Dennis, thank you for asking. Thank you for having me here. This is wonderful to be able to share some of these thoughts and views and reminiscence and everything else. So let me just tell you, Orquesta Alto Maiz became part of the fabric of our Iowa culture. Let's put it that way. Before Orquesta Alto Maiz, no one knew about clave. No one was salsa dancing. Then Orquesta Alto Maiz, again founded and organized by Bob Washut at the University of Northern Iowa. He pulled me in. I had been a student of his in the past, so he told me while I was a student of his, hey, we should put together a salsa band. I laughed and I said, yeah, in Iowa, good luck. Well, then he called me a few years later, and he says, hey, I got a band to put together. I'd like for you to join. So that's when things kind of got started. And at first, people didn't know what to do with this music, but they were fascinated by it. And then it kept growing. People got more interested, and then the Latinos heard it, and they started dancing to it. And others would look at the Latinos and say, "Hey, look, they're doing these steps, the recurring steps." And they asked them, "Can you teach me how to do this?" And all of a sudden, we have people mimicking the Latino dance moves and at our performances, and eventually it grew. This is where it gets weird. It grew to the point where people were doing ballroom dancing moves to our salsa music, which is, it's music of the people. You play salsa music anywhere in Latin America, people dance normally. They don't dance ballroom dancing to this. So it got a little bit funny because, we had the ballroom dancers, we had the salsa dancers, and we had the people who just wanted to have fun. And the jazz was because we threw that in there too. That kept going. And at one point in time, there was some talk about maybe, there was an end to Orquesta Alto Maiz. And I think that I knew many people, too many people would hate to have that happen. They just wanted more, and they appreciated the band. And so I kind of took it upon myself to proceed, to keep it going. And I was very fortunate that the caliber of musicians that we have around here was such that it was possible to do something like that, because the caliber of musicians we had in the beginning. Look at who we're talking to right now, Jim Dreier, the legend. We have that, and we had so many other people who were amazingly talented, out of this world musicians, and they were part of this group. How do you replenish some of those people? So fortunately, we did have that. And what's even better, we have our children. The children of Orquesta Alto Maiz grew up, and they became musicians, and now they're playing in the band too. And I mean it literally. When we played, some of the people that are playing with the band were kids. They were just kids, and their parents would bring them to listen to the salsa band perform, and that is the music got in their ears, so they grew up with that music, and eventually they became musicians. and at least 3 of them have performed with Orquesta Alto Maiz in a full capacity of great musicianship. So that's what we have today, is that we have a great legacy. We have children of Orquesta Alto Maiz playing in the band.
You literally had to grow your own replacements.
They were growing in spite of us. But they found us. They found us.
Well, there has definitely been an erroneous belief that the orchestra, that everybody retired. And I remember, because the final, one of the final gigs of the original lineup was at Jazz Under the Stars, and we tried to take great pains at the time to say, yeah, this group is not going to be performing all the time. And and finally now I think we've gotten that message. It took a little time to get that message across, but I think that we have. And Jim, you keep threatening, I think, to retire from Orquesta Alto Maiz, but it never quite happens.
No, I don't even threaten. I only retire from my University of Iowa job. That's the only thing I retire from. So yeah, it's always a great pleasure to play with the band, and Ed's right. We have a lot of people that we draw from now, that especially when we get the people that are really familiar with the book and have played with this group quite often. It's a real pleasure and a joy to play with the band. So it's a testament to Ed that he kept it going. And it did change. I mean, the first group was with Bob and Steve and a couple of the other guys, and that was like the first version of it, and that ended, and Ed decided to move it forward with new people. And so it's a different group, but it retains a lot of the same elements, a lot of the same energy. And there's a lot of long-term members that still play with the group, and we don't play a lot. Ed is very careful about booking the band. He books it only when it pays the musicians a fair amount, which I really appreciate. So, the days of playing a Thursday night in Clinton, or in the Quad Cities from 10 to 2 a.m.
for tip money.
And then for $60 each, if that, and getting home at 3 and 4 in the morning, those days are not happening anymore, which is a good thing. But that was part of our growth. That was part of our history. So it was all good when it was happening. But it feels really wonderful. We just played last weekend, actually, in Cedar Falls for a fundraiser, and we're playing again. So we'll be all ready to go for this event. And I think it's wonderful that you're having us there, and a great cause. We've been able to share music and the education of jazz and Latin jazz in Iowa so much more because of the efforts of KCCK and the education that you guys do. Your jazz camps and your schoolhouse jazz and all the stuff that you guys do is so important. We're really happy to be a part of it.
Well, thanks for that. Ed, it's got to be really rewarding, because when you started this a long time ago, a lot of it was you teaching these gringos these Latin rhythms. And now, 30 years gone, 35 years gone, this new group of musicians coming up that grew up listening to the Salsa Band and seeking out other kinds of Latin jazz, they're probably coming into the band pretty well prepped.
They definitely are. I mean, the teachers, the ones that went before them, they were great teachers, all of them. And so they left this legacy and they passed it on. Look at Jim.
Of course, one of those teachers is Jim Dreier.
Exactly. Look at, the number, I don't know how many students have come out of his studio understanding Afro-Cuban music better than they would have if they had just been, casually listening or trying to copy it or whatever. But what you first, the quote unquote gringos don't, I'm not going to take more credit than I should. I'm going to tell you that these musicians are incredible. And this is one thing that they did. That's a dirty little secret for some of the other musicians out there. They actually practiced. They actually went to the woodshed, and they listened to the tunes, and they tried to copy the things that they heard. and they would come up to me and ask me like, "Hey, does this sound right?" And sometimes I would say yes, even though it wasn't the authentic sound, because it made no difference to me. We weren't about to copy just verbatim what someone else sounded like. It was okay to sound differently. It was okay to have our own sound. So as long as it was tasteful in my mind and it sounded like it fit in with what we were doing, it was fine. It was okay. So many times when people ask me about, am I doing this right? I really don't care. You're just doing great. It sounds really good.
The
And
heart,
that was
there's
it.
heart.
Yeah, yeah. But sometimes, there's some technical things that need to be done exactly the way that the tradition dictates and the cultural approach dictates. So yeah, there were times when we had to say, okay, well, no, this is, we got to do this way or that way. But I didn't have to do much. These guys were amazing and are amazing musicians. I didn't have to do much, and they practiced, and they it surprised me that they practiced as much as they did. Once when I heard one of I think it was even Bob Washut saying, I haven't played this kind of stuff for a while, so I need to get back to doing it, so that he could get back into that mindset, into that feel, into that, everything that it takes to understand the music from the inside out. My hat's off to every single one of those guys, because they loved the music so much, they enjoyed it so much, they actually practiced it.
Yeah.
Has the sound of the band, the style, what has evolved in this last generation of the band? Anything? What's different?
I'll answer that.
Go ahead.
I think one of the things that really helps and really has made a difference is that some of the people that Ed has brought in have been people that have grown up with the music. So he's had a couple of conga players that are from the tradition, and so I think having another person besides Ed who have really grown up with it and have that music in their DNA has really made a difference. We have a conga player right now who's an immigrant from Cuba, Maurice, and he's an amazing conga player, and he can also sing with Ed. So he's got that sound, and that really helps. I think our horn players are, they're just top notch. Ed gets really great horn players. We've always had good horn players, but some of the younger guys have an energy that is you just can't match. And then you've got the people that have had tradition in the group that help keep things together and keep continuity. Steve Shanley, Danny O'Lean, Paul Cunliffe, myself, of course, Ed, that's the main guy. Ed does about 4 jobs in the band. And that doesn't count booking the band or even fronting the band. Even as a musician, he's singing the lead, he's singing backgrounds, he's playing timbales, he's playing conga drums, he's following the charts, he's directing the band all at the same time. So it's pretty amazing. So I think there's unique things about each version of this band. The original version with when Steve and Bob were in the band, it had a certain sound that was unique to that era. And it was really, you can't match that. That was what it was. And then this group has its own sound and its own vitality that is unique to this era as well. So I would just say that it's alive and well and really vibrant. And that's thanks to Ed and the people that participate.
Well, it's amazing that that you've been able to keep this going and keep it fresh and everything for so many years. Again, the tradition that did not exist, nobody knew anything about Latin jazz 40 years ago when you all came together, and now it really is a part of the fabric of our little chunk of Eastern Iowa. I mean, this is a place where Latin music matters, and it's mainly because of the Orquesta.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I want to piggyback on that and say there were, I'm going to say, because the influence was a lot stronger back when the original group was put together. There were many high schools and colleges in the state who took to Latin music in a way that they wouldn't have before. They would even call us up and ask us, okay, we want to do this chart. how do we play it correctly? So they had resources that they can reach out to that they trusted. And we were able to look at that and go, oh my gosh, we really have changed the fabric of what, the landscape, the cultural landscape, the musical landscape here in Iowa. And it was, to me, it just blew my mind to think that we were capable of doing that. But it was the influence of all these educators that were in the band. They were able to reach out with the music to their students, right? They're playing the music, the students see them, they get excited about it. They go, my teacher's playing this kind of music, it's so cool. And it moves on from there, and it grows from there. And the last thing before I stop talking is that what Jim was saying is so true in terms of the evolution of the band. But let me tell you one more thing. Jim made sure that some of us were able to put foot down in Cuba, in the place where all of this stuff comes from. And he did it many times, about 3 times or 4 times, if I remember correctly. I was able to go one time with the University of Iowa as a faculty. And we were able to touch the real thing. We were able to hear the real thing. We were able to be eyeball to eyeball with the real thing and be taught by the real thing, the real musicians, the real folk musicians in Cuba. Talk about evolution. That took the band to a completely new place when we went to Cuba and we actually learned what it was all about. And we learned from the roots themselves. So Jim had a lot to do with the evolution of the band.
Orquesta Alto Maiz is headlining KCCK's Taste of Jazz Friday night, but that is not the only. You said that the band is still, doing gigs regularly, not quite the performance schedule that you had when everybody was a little bit younger and hungrier. But you've got a big one coming up this summer because the Orquesta Alto Maiz returns to the Iowa City Jazz Festival.
Yes. We're going to be at the Iowa City Jazz Festival. We are going to close it out in style with lots of great Latin jazz, because, the festival is about jazz. And we understand that we can go both ways. We can give you dance music all the way, or we can kind of jazz it up all the way too. So we're gonna try to balance that out a little bit and make sure that our jazz fan base gets what they want and what they need, and those that came to the festival for jazz get what they want and what they need, and those that enjoy a little bit of rhythm from Africa and from Cuba also get what they wanted to hear. So yes.
The orchestra has been an important part of the Jazz Festival. Steve Grismore, one of the early members of the Salsa Band, of course, is the founder of the festival and made sure that you played many times in those early years. Jim, what does it mean to come back to that festival?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's like a homecoming in a lot of ways. And it's also a great incentive for the band to really put on our best face and really step up and do our best job for everybody. We take it really seriously, and so I think it's a great opportunity for everybody involved, and we really appreciate the opportunity to perform at this event. And we thank you, Dennis, for helping us get that happening, and all the people at the Summer of the Arts and everybody that helped make that happen. So we're really looking forward to it. It's going to be an awesome event.
Orquesta Alto Maiz headlines Taste of Jazz coming up in the next few days. And of course, if for some reason you can't get to Jazz Under the Stars or Taste of Jazz, you will be able to see them closing out the Iowa City Jazz Festival first weekend in July. Gentlemen, thanks for being with me today.
Thank you, Dennis. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And yes, welcome. Everybody, please come on out and have a little fun, have a little salsa. Put a little salsa in your life.
You can hear the Culture Crawl live on the radio many weekdays at 10:30, or download the podcast, watch or listen on your own schedule at kcck.org/culture, or using your favorite podcast player. I'm Dennis Green, and I'll talk to you later.